न svato nāpy parato न dvābhyāṁ nāpyahetutaḥ utpannā jātu vidyante bhāvāḥ kvacana ke-cana.
svato nāpi parato dvābhyāṁ ahetutaḥ utpannā jātu vidyante bhāvāḥ ke-cana. MMK chapter 1 verse 1. Neither from self, nor from others, nor from both, nor also from no cause, have any things at all ever arisen anywhere. Working from the English, self is sva, and from is the ablative suffix tas or taha, or before na, taha goes to to. So svato nāpy. Na svato, na is not is na. Na svato, not from self. Then neither is a na, not, neither nor. Or nāpy. Api means also. So nāpy, na plus api, nāpy means neither nāpy, neither nor. And others is para means other. So parato means from others or from the other. Could be singular or plural. So from others is para means other, the other, others, and ablative suffix tas or taha or before na, to. So neither from self nor from others. Na svato nāpy parato, nor from both. Again, na, not, nor. Both is dvi or dva, and I think it's cognate with a dual in English. Then the ablative dual, in this case he hasn't used the ablative suffix, he's used the ablative case, which means again from. So dvābhyāṁ is ablative dual, it means from to or from both. And again we've got the nāpy, neither nor, and then cause is jātu. Jātu means cause or direct cause or primary cause or motivation, primary motivation or impulse. And it often appears in the compound jātu pratyaya. In that case, jātu means the direct or the primary cause, and the pratyaya means the surrounding causes, the circumstances, the conditions. And pratyaya is the title of this chapter, as I will cover in a separate video discussing the title of the chapter, pratyaya pariksha, exploration of cause. But here we have nor also from no cause, nāpyahetutaḥ. So nāpy followed by the a goes to nāpyahetutaḥ, and from cause would be hetutaḥ, again with the ablative suffix. And so from the a is negative, so ahetutaḥ, from no cause. So na svato nāpy parato dvābhyāṁ nāpyahetutaḥ. Na svato, not from self. Nāpy parato, nor either from others. Na dvābhyāṁ, not from both. Nāpyahetutaḥ, neither nor else from no cause. And these four elements are in Indian philosophy predating the Buddha, certainly predating Nagarjuna. They're like the four horns of the dilemma, which is called in Sanskrit chatuskoti. Chatur means four, so chatus means four, and koti means it means end or tip or horn. So in English we talk about the horns of our dilemma. Well, this chatus koti, philosophers call it the tetralemma. So dilemma means two, horns of two things, two horns, and the chatus koti means four horns. So this was the ancient Indian way of explaining the reality of things. How do real things come to be? Well, the four possibilities they considered were from the self, from themselves, or from others, or in a kind of like Venn diagram, from both, or the other possibilities, they're without a cause. So here Nagarjuna is negating all four. So this must have been quite a radical challenge to people who'd been brought up to think in terms of four phases: self, others, combination, or transcending causes. And if I put it like that, such a person is me, having gone to Japan in 1982 at the age of 22 and met my Zen teacher Gudo Nishijima, who basically, that's how he explained reality: idealism, materialism, or subject and object, action in which subject and object are combined, and transcendent reality in which causality is somehow transcended. At least that's how I understood it. So here we have Nagarjuna. Ironically enough, I was pointed to Nagarjuna by my Zen teacher, and what we find in Nagarjuna is the total negation of what my teacher taught me, which is something. So moving on to the second line. Have any things. So things is bhāvāḥ. Bhāvāḥ is from the verbal root bhu, to be or to become. And here with a long A, bhāvāḥ. So sometimes with a short A, bhava means becoming, existence. Here we've got long first A, bhāvāḥ. And bhava means again existence or existing thing, existent thing, or in short, a thing. So it means a thing as conceived by a realist. That might include me, a real being. It might include other creatures. It might include a desk. It might include the earth, a star. So an existing thing as conceived by the realist. So what Nagarjuna is saying is there is no such thing on the basis of emptiness. So have any things. So have any things is bhāvāḥ, things, ke-cana. So ke-cana means any. With na, it means not any. Na ke-cana. So the na, the negation, is the four negations we looked at in the first line. Na svato, nāpy, parato, dvābhyāṁ, nāpy, ahetutaḥ. So not, from the first line, ke-cana, any. Bhāvāḥ, things. And then you've also got kva-cana. So na kva-cana means not anywhere. Kva means where. So na kva-cana, not anywhere. Na ke-cana, not any. Bhāvāḥ, things. Then we got at all is jātu, emphatic. So have any things at all. Na kva-cana, ke-cana, jātu. Arisen is utpannā. So here it's bhāvāḥ is nominative masculine plural, and utpannā is nominative masculine plural. Before jātu, the last sound is dropped, so it says utpannā jātu. So if we go from the Sanskrit, utpannā jātu vidyante bhāvāḥ kva-cana ke-cana. utpannā, arisen. So utpannā is the past participle of utpad, as in samutpada. Pratitya samutpada means dependent arising. So the utpad of samutpada in its past participle is utpannā. And here the past participle utpannā agrees with bhāvāḥ, so it's utpannā. And so it means arisen. Arisen things is utpannā bhāvāḥ. So again, jātu is at all, utpannā jātu, arisen at all. Then vidyante, I haven't actually translated vidyante in my translation here, but vidyante means is plural, third person plural, passive of vid, to know or to find. So vidyante means are found. Utpannā jātu vidyante bhāvāḥ. It means so. Utpannā, again, arisen, jātu at all, vidyante, are found, bhāvāḥ, things, kva-cana, anywhere, ke-cana, anything. So again, nā svato, nāpy, parato, dvābhyāṁ, ahetutaḥ, utpannā jātu vidyante bhāvāḥ kva-cana ke-cana. Neither from self nor from others, nor from both, nor also from no cause, have any things at all ever arisen anywhere. Okay, well, this is absolutely mind-blowing. See, in the first instance, this is an exploration of suffering, the dependent arising of suffering, which we've covered in chapter 26. So when it came to suffering, the Buddha looked for the cause of suffering. Okay, and so if you follow the old Indian philosophical approach, suffering could be your own damn fault, you know. In Japanese they say mi kara deta sabi, the rust comes from within, you know. If you're suffering, you brought it on yourself. So that's the first approach to suffering. Suffering is generated from itself. But then, you know, the compassionate lefties will say, no, you were, people discriminated against you because you're a woman or the colour of your skin, people went to private schools and you didn't have a good education, you know, and so on and so forth. So they're all saying, no, it's not your fault. Suffering has been visited upon you by society, from outside, by circumstances. In other words, parato, from others. If you're an angry feminist, then no doubt the other in question is the oppressive patriarchy. And then people who've got a more moderate approach would say, actually, you can't say it's purely from yourself, your own fault, and it's not purely society. The truth is, it's from the combination of the two. Now, that sounds very reasonable. You would think that would be the middle way. But Nagarjuna is saying, no, it's not from both. You see, this is the real radicalness, and why it's so absolutely relevant to what's going on with the divisions in the world at the moment. He's saying, no, it's not from both. Dvābhyāṁ. It's not from a combination of self and others. We're not looking for the combination of left-wing and right-wing politics. What we're saying is they're both bullshit. They're both missing the point. And also, the people supposedly in the middle who are trying to say, we'll take elements of left and elements of right, they're also missing the point. So suffering is not, this is what the Buddha said, the suffering is not generated from within, and it's not generated from without, and it's not generated from both. And furthermore, it's not generated from no cause. The Buddha's not saying that suffering just appears willy-nilly and it's not caused by anything. So, nāpy ahetutaḥ, nor also from no cause. Well, in that case, you know, how does suffering come about? Well, it comes about through dependent arising. That's the whole point. Suffering is not a thing which is caused. It's dependently arisen. And what's dependently arisen is empty. It doesn't exist as a thing. Once you understand it, it's so bloody simple, but it's extremely difficult to understand. So, once we've understood it in relation to suffering, which is the first task, then what Nagarjuna is saying here, utpannā svato nāpi parato dvābhyāṁ ahetutaḥ. Okay, so you think he's talking about suffering, neither from self nor others, nor from both, nor also from no cause. Utpannā jātu vidyante bhāvāḥ kva-cana ke-cana. Have any things at all ever arisen anywhere? So what he's saying is, that's why it's so mind-blowing. Once you've understood it in relation to suffering, which is, the primary sort of existential question, why am I here suffering? Once you've understood it, what the Buddha's teaching is in relation to suffering, when the Buddha explained the dependent arising of suffering, as for example, in chapter 26 of MMK, or you could also see chapter 14 of Buddha Charita by Ashvaghosha, where Ashvaghosha explains the Buddha's enlightenment, the Buddha's awakening, in terms of knowing what he needed to know about the dependent arising of suffering. But what Nagarjuna is saying here right from the outset, it's not just applied to suffering. Everything that we think of as a thing has never arisen anywhere. There is no such thing as an existing thing, because what we think of as existing things are in fact empty. So I'm going to personalise this now by talking about two books that I've been reading recently. Well, one book and several books actually. And the one book is called Middle England by Jonathan Coe, and the several books are the Jack Reacher books by Lee Child, whose original name is James Grant, and both Jonathan Coe and Lee Child went to the same school that I went to, which was King Edward School, Birmingham, which was full of people a lot cleverer than I was, although I was generally top of the class in my primary school. When I went to King Edward's, it was a bit of a shock because I was the youngest boy in the school and didn't cope very well in the first year. I couldn't understand things, and I'd never had that experience. I'd always been on top of things at my primary school, so that was a big shock. But the point was, there was this school in Birmingham that was filled with the people a whole lot cleverer than me, and two of those people were Lee Child, in other words Jim Grant, who was a couple of years above me, and Jonathan Coe, who was a couple of years below me. So what struck me in reading those two books is how those two guys, clever as they are both kind of representing opposite approaches to real things, which is to say that Jonathan Coe is more on the left, and his book really gets you thinking about society. Whose side are you on? Is the question that Middle England asks, as I understand it, and so it really made me reflect deeply on my own circumstances, if you like, because one of the characters in the book is an angry feminist, Corrie Anderton. He's a young firebrand, really angry feminist, and she stages a campaign against somebody who's accused of transphobia. The accusation is totally unjust, but Corrie Anderton is sure she's right. She says, "I know whose side I'm on." So to me, she reminds me somewhat of my mother, who was an angry feminist before there was even such a thing as an angry feminist, because her father abandoned her in her infancy, and about the only memory she has of him is him slapping her legs for being naughty. So my mum from an early age basically has it in for men, especially masculine, authoritarian, chauvinist type men, which is precisely the man she married, which is my father, who in the 1970s he belonged to the notorious West Midlands Police Force. You might Google Birmingham 6, and he learned about policing in the South Wales valleys. He came from a place called Ebervale, and I heard the story that the old traditional policing methods there were the local petty criminal would be thrown down the steps of the police station. This was what passed for due process in those days. So him and policemen of his ilk referred to each other as DBs, the dying breed. So the real old school type policeman, not high on political correctness. So one of my dad's redeeming features was absolute fierce devotion to my mother, despite the fact that she had it in for him. You know, he quite liked having the mickey taken out of him by my mother. So it was this strange dynamic. But also included they'd have furious rows. They were very young. They got married because my mother got pregnant. She was a teenage pregnancy. She got pregnant with me when my parents were at university. So they were very young, you know, when I was a child, and they were always having furious rows. And in the aftermaths of these rows, I would always be asked to take sides, you know, whose side was I on? Basically, it was my mother that was asking that. My dad didn't really care so much. He was down the pub, you know, drowning his sorrows usually. But my mother somewhat manipulated me. She tried to manipulate me to be on her side against my father. But in many ways, I'm a chip off the old block. As my brother said recently, you know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. For better or for worse, I'm very like my father. And so Jonathan Coe's book really caused me to reflect on having been asked from an early age, whose side are you on, you know? And this is the question that Brexit is forcing British people to ask themselves. Whose side are you on, you know? And my answer is, I'm not on anybody's fucking side. And stop fucking asking me to take someone's side, you know? Especially I'd like to say it to my mother, to be honest. You know, because after 60 years, she's still at it, you know. I reacted very strongly against her. She sent me an email beginning of this year, you know. You don't know what it's like to live with a male chauvinist, you know. And when I objected to that, you know, I had enough of that kind of whinging on my mum's part. My mother wasn't really so much upset that I attacked her. She thought the great injustice was I didn't attack my dad, you know. I was seemed taking his side, you see that. And so that even clarified even more. For her, it's all about whose side are you on? I'm not on anybody's side. That's what this verse is saying. That's what the Buddha's teaching is saying. Don't take sides. The teaching of the middle path doesn't mean there's left and there's a right and there's a middle path, which is a kind of a combination of two sides. No, it's saying the whole business of taking sides is bullshit. And also, if you identify with the middle and think you're a Buddhist, that's also bullshit. Because there's nothing to side with. You know, there's no middle ground even. There's nowhere to go, you know. So, Jonathan Coe, his book, I found it a page turner for one thing. It's a good story, you know. It's got convincing characters in it, and it's also, for me, it was cathartic, because as you come to the denouement of it, and the question is asked in earnest, whose side are you on? And you see the sin of certainty, where Corrie Anderson says, I know whose side I'm on, you know, the angry feminist, the self-righteous neo-Marxist who thinks she's understood everything. So Jonathan Coe's book is cathartic, but you're left with the impression that when it comes down to it, he's on the left. Okay, he's not really a neutral observer as an author. He's sort of on the left. And the thing which makes that most clear to me is his attitude to the absolute out-and-out, all-round bastard, the selfish bastard, Ronald Culpeper. So Ronald Culpeper is kind of the equivalent of my father, really, yeah, or me, which is to say that he's a kind of hyper individual. He's a right winger, and I can't help noticing that Culpeper, from where Jonathan Coe stood 2 years below me, bore a striking resemblance to my own schoolboy persona, because I say when I went to King Edward's, I was the youngest boy in the school. I had this strange entrance examination where it meant I had to miss a year between primary school and secondary school. So, and I had kind of fine features and very blonde hair, so I got the nickname Snowy. The maths teacher, who was the form master in the first year, called me Snowy. So, and that name stuck, which, you know, I didn't like being called Snowy because it was a kind of effeminate name. And being the youngest boy in the school, suddenly I wasn't like one of the most athletic kids anymore. I was just a little guy with a high voice. That was another thing. I was teased for having a high voice. And in a maths lesson, having been very precocious at mental arithmetic, there were things I couldn't understand. And in the music lesson, you had to follow a score. I had no idea how to read music, so because I couldn't cope with not understanding, I burst into tears once in a music lesson and once in a maths lesson. And so among people who knew me from the first year, nobody thought I was a hard man whatsoever. I was more like Snowy the Crybaby. But when it came to playing rugby, I sort of redeemed myself somewhat. And then one of the teachers nicknamed me Mighty Mouse, because when it came to playing rugby, that was in my Welsh inheritance. You know, I was really up for it. You know, my grandfather in Wales wanted me to play rugby for Wales. That was his great ambition. So this combination of factors, I mean, something very weak and easily upset and sensitive, but also this other quite aggressive, getting stuck in aspect to my character. And by the time Jonathan Coe would have been, say, let's say, in the third year of King Edward's, I would have been 2 years above him, and I would have been captain. Say I was captain of the school rugby team for my age group, which was the year below me, because in that year I wasn't physically weaker than everybody else. Plus, I did weight training and so I compensated for being weak and turned myself into the opposite of the effeminate Snowy. You know, by weight training and so on, and being captain of the rugby team, I cultivated this non-effeminate persona. And where Jonathan Coe would have been looking at from 2 years below me, I must have been the equivalent of the selfish bastard, the wimp-despising Ronald Culpeper. And if Jonathan Coe was a kind of an academic, music-loving, literature-loving type, then I know that my attitude to him would have been a very sort of macho. It would have been, I'm sure Jonathan Coe had an eye on me and didn't like what he saw. So that's another reason why the book's interesting and makes me see again that he's painted Ronald Culpeper as a completely two-dimensional character. He's very good at deep understanding of the other characters, especially say Corrie Anderton. He understands where she's coming from and sympathises with why a young person would be so angry about things. But he hasn't got any sympathy for Ronald Culpeper. Ronald Culpeper is just a right-wing, out-and-out shit. So insofar as Culpeper is me, I would like to put my hand up and say, well, you know, Ronald Culpeper might have some redeeming features, and if you look how he came to, you know, how suffering came about for him, it might not be true to think that he absolutely brought it all on himself. You know, there may have been causes and circumstances that would cause you to feel more kindly about him. And that's what people on the left of the Brexit debate, the Remainers on the left, they demonise Nigel Farage or even Tommy Robinson. You know, Tommy Robinson totally beyond the pale. But it's not a question of taking sides against the wrong other, because again, the person you demonise as the wrong other, the Nazi sympathiser, also does not exist as a thing unto himself. See, again, svato, nāpy, parato, dvābhyāṁ, ahetutaḥ, utpannā, jātu, vidyante, bhāvāḥ, kva-cana, ke-cana. Neither from himself, nor from others, nor from both, nor also from no cause, have any things at all ever arisen anywhere. That includes Nigel Farage, it includes Tommy Robinson, it includes Adolf Hitler. You can't pin the blame on any one thing, because no one thing has ever arisen. So Jonathan Coe's book, Middle England, for all I enjoyed reading it and it was useful for me to reflect on it, to me it's not in the middle, because for Jonathan Coe there is such a thing as society, and this is saying there is no such thing as society. No such thing as society has ever arisen, and there's also no such evil as the evil right. You know, the let's say the chauvinist patriarchy, or the right-wing elite as conceived by people on the left. That also doesn't exist. Equally, the left-wing elite, Guardian columnists, etc., and professors of humanities departments of universities and so on, the right wing conceive of those as the elite, the liberal elite. But this is saying no, the liberal elite has never arisen anywhere. There is no such thing as what you want to demonise. So that's one side. Jonathan Coe, I'm suggesting, is more blaming suffering on others. But then on the other side, Lee Child, which I also very much enjoy his Jack Reader books. He's kind of, Jack Reacher is a modern day knight errant. He's a heroic individual. And what I like about Lee Child's way of writing is he's kind of short, clear, direct sentences. And reading Jack Reacher books is like an exercise in thinking straight. You know, there's a real integrity in Jack Reacher's way of thinking and his way of acting. So, the fault in it, if we're looking at what's said in this first verse here, is it paints Jack Reacher as an individual, a strong individual, which is true to a certain point, but if basically Jack Reacher is more of a right-wing hero, because he's affirming the individual. And what this is saying is there's never been an individual. There's never been any individual person anywhere, because again, what we think of as an individual is empty. So if Jonathan Coe is somewhat on the left and Jack Reacher is somewhat on the right, this verse is taking away the basis of believing in either idea. The other thing that I wanted to say about this verse, you say I've suggested that on the left you've got someone like Jonathan Coe, and more leaning to the right is Lee Child with Jack Reacher. For someone with a big role in modern culture in the middle, I looked at Jordan Peterson, and he's explained very nicely using the archetypal Pinocchio story of how Pinocchio's journeys, as directed by the Blue Fairy, to be brave, be truthful, and then be unselfish. And Jack Reacher, in a way, he meets those criteria of the archetypal hero by being a really brave and true individual. But the unselfishness, that's what this verse is pointing us to. Because so it's like realizing effort as an individual is the point, until ultimately the point is to lose individuality. So that's the unselfishness. So what relating Jordan Peterson to what Jonathan Coe's saying and what Jack Reacher is representing, you see, we can't transform ourselves from being a sort of hopeless wimp to Jack Reacher. It's just it's a nice fantasy for us, but in fact it's unattainable. It's just it's an illusion that we can go around being like Jack Reacher. But what we can do, in Jordan Peterson's terms, is tidy our room. You know, do something you can do within the orbit of possibility to make things a little bit better. And that's the teaching of the middle. Because, see, if there's such a thing as an existent thing, it exists like that forever. It's not susceptible to being changed. This is the big point of MMK chapter 24, you know, where the practical meaning of emptiness is explored. Emptiness is not something to be understood philosophically. It makes a difference to, if you're a young man who has been encouraged by an angry feminist, like my mother was, to take sides against yourself, what that ultimately leads to, unless there's some kind of enlightened witness that directs your energy constructively, taking sides against yourself, the logical conclusion of it is suicide. And the reason I've been reflecting on that is over the last few days, I've been prone to, I've seen in myself where that comes from. You know, I've actually had suicidal thoughts. And so again, I think of Jordan Peterson. You know, he's flying the flag for masculinity in the face of so many young men taking their own lives, you know. And this is why. This is the fundamental sort of basis of it. If you think of yourself as a thing, and then somebody encourages you to take sides against that thing, then the logical conclusion is to destroy it. And that's what suicide is. It's destroying yourself as a thing. So what this first verse is upholding is the principle that no, don't do. There's no need to do that, because you don't exist as a thing. You are living in a stage of everything being empty. That means everything is amenable to change. So you can make things a little bit better. Tidy a room. You know, Jordan Peterson says it much better, more eloquently than I'm saying it. But what I do see clearly and would like to express is this first verse. It might seem philosophical, but it's absolutely consistent with Jordan Peterson's message to young men. You know, with angry feminists who talk of toxic masculinity are turning masculinity into a thing, and they're out to fight it. You know, they're taking sides against something which they want to get rid of. But young blokes who are suffering need some understanding to combat that, because that's false, that's evil, and it's dangerous. Now, I'm 100% with Jordan Peterson. It's the most dangerous thing there is this neo-Marxist tendency, which is gaining traction among young people who are too fucking stupid and lazy to actually think things out for themselves and see the falsity of it. So the fact that there is no non-empty thing means you can make a difference, not by trying to be Jack Reacher or you know, trying to get enlightenment on an individual basis in a kind of selfish, tunnel visioned way in which you only care about your own enlightenment and sod everybody else, you know, which I've got to hold my hands up. That's how I was when I set off for Japan in 1982 looking for Zen enlightenment, you know. It doesn't mean you have to, you know, try to be a great hero all at once. It means tidy your room, or as part of that, start thinking straight. That's what I like about Lee Child's stuff. He's a straight thinker. It's the same in the Alexander technique. People think the Alexander technique is about learning how to have good posture, sorting your posture out. No, it's not actually. What people see in terms of improved posture is just the manifestation of more orderly thinking processes going on in the brain and the nervous system. So people think of Alexander as a kind of body work, but that's missing the point. So what Alexander work is really about is learning how to think straighter. And for 20 years, more than 20 years now, I've been in Alexander work, and it's only this year I've begun to think straighter about not taking sides against yourself. That's what my mother encouraged me to do. You see, by encouraging me to take sides against my father, who I'm so like, she was encouraging me to take sides against myself. And that's why I've gone through life so often shooting myself in the foot, including in Alexander work, you know. So, because everything is empty, that doesn't mean nothing matters, you know, nothing's worth working towards. On the contrary, because no thing has ever arisen, because everything is empty, then to get your thinking sorted out, a little bit like Jack Reacher, learning to think straighter and constructively, it's worth it, you know. It makes sense for young people to have young men especially, to have suicidal thoughts, because, you know, I turn on BBC Radio 4 and it's feminism, political correctness coming out from, makes me sick, you know. we need something to help us understand why suicide is not the best option for masculine blokes, you know, and here it is. The understanding, the teaching, the agenda of the angry feminists of the left is not true, and here's why. Because the patriarchy which they're targeting does not exist. It's their prapancha. They're spinning into self-existence something which doesn't exist, which is the male patriarchy. Again, Jordan Peterson is, you know, on top of it, much better than I am. But I'm just holding my hand up and saying, you don't have to belong to the Judeo-Christian tradition. You know, what Jordan Peterson's interpretation of biblical stories, fantastic. I love it. You know, his explication of Jewish history, you know, how the Jews through history, when they've gone wrong, that they've gone back to the beginning and said, you know, gone before God. They've gone back to God and said, we've got it wrong, you know, and that's how they've, as a people, kept going in the right direction. You know, so I've got nothing bad to say about any of that. But this is not the Judeo-Christian tradition. Okay, this goes back to what the Buddha discovered about the dependent arising of suffering and the dependent arising of everything. And so you don't have to, you know, the Judeo-Christian way forward is not the only one by any means. Because that no thing has ever risen anywhere, there's atonement and redemption are possible. So, how to redeem ourselves? This is what I wanted to say about Culpeper as well. You see, Jonathan Coe's view of Culpeper, Culpeper is beyond the pale. He's just an out and out shit. But if you model Culpeper on me, I don't accept that I'm an out and out shit. We're better off dead. You know, that's what. See, in some way, Jonathan Coe and my mother are on the same side. Male chauvinism is terrible. Masculinity is evil. No, I'm not accepting that, because the logical extension of that is if you are a masculine, a macho kind of bloke, then what are you going to do? No. Redemption is if you are aggressive, then aggressively pursue some constructive goal. You know, aggressively tidy your room, as Jordan Peterson says. Now, basically, I've been having suicidal thoughts in the same way that the Jews, as a people, get to a point and they realise something's gone wrong. So, in that situation, you want to go back to something. In Jewish history, the Jews went back to God. You know, opened themselves up to God and considered what they'd done so as not to please God. But if you're a young bloke who's got suicidal thoughts, you don't. Something's gone wrong. That's clear. But what the wrongness has gone back. What's gone wrong is caused us to suffer, the suffering is dependently arisen. It hasn't got a cause like your masculinity. Na svato, nāpy, parato, na dvābhyāṁ, nāpy ahetutaḥ. Utpannā, jātu, vidyante, bhāvāḥ, kva-cana, ke-cana. Neither from self, nor from others, nor from both, nor also from no cause, have any things at all ever arisen anywhere.